Hello everyone, and welcome along to the stream tonight. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So the first thing to get out of the way would be, can everyone hear me? That would be a good start. Can I get a thumbs up? Oh, look at that. So thank you very much for that. So welcome along to the stream tonight, everyone. I am fortunate enough to have a guest on the show today. So the guest today, you might know him, is a person by the name of Rob Reynolds. So Rob Reynolds should be appearing up there on the top right hand corner of your screen. So if everyone can say hello to Rob, that would be appreciated. And if Rob can say hello to make sure that he's coming through loud and clear as well.
Hello. How does the sound work? Good? Not good?
Just wait for a quick thumbs up that everyone can hear Rob. Yay, we hear him. Okay, so
all right.
So a quick mention about the setup that we have got going on here. It's a little bit different from what I normally do. So we are using Skype. So Rob and I are on a Skype call just now, and we've brought him into OBS in order to get him out onto the Twitch stream. And what we're also going to do, which is a complete difference from what I normally do, is that Rob is going to be driving things. So we're going to share Rob's screen through Skype as well. So this is Rob's screen that you're seeing here now. Okay. If all of that falls apart, we have a fallback position, maybe. But the ideal is that Rob is going to be driving the demo, and I'm going to be here as a facilitator, looking for questions and helping out with anything that comes up as well. So, firstly, we've got quite a few folks in the chat room, so welcome along to everyone. I see some familiar names and some folks who are joining, I'm guessing, to see the Chocolatey Central Management Deployments demonstration. So welcome to you all, and thank you all for coming along. I don't think I've got much else to say, really. This is being recorded as per normal. So if you weren't able to attend, or you know someone that wasn't able to attend just now, it will be up on YouTube in the next couple of days, and there will also be the video on demand on Twitch as well. It only hangs about for a shorter period of time, so YouTube would be the place to get the recording. That if you want to watch it back. And there are some chocolatey folks in the chat room. So there's Adil, there's Stevie, there's Joel. I think I've got everyone there. So if there are any questions that I miss on the chat room, I'm hoping that those guys will pick them up. I know Maurice and Kim are in the chat room as well. So from a chocolate community point of view, Maurice and Kim will. Oh, I see Manfred in the chat room as well. Hello, Manfred. Hopefully they'll be able to answer any questions you might have as well. And Adil's saying, feel free to mention that too. Yes, so if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll pick them up from there. So, without further ado, I'm gonna facilitate this stream more than anything. But I'm gonna hand over to Rob, who's up there in the corner, and we'll go from there. So, off you go.
All right. This is a feat of awesome that took us a little while to figure out how I could run this and how Gary could facilitate it. But Gary figured out some things very quickly, and we had a couple of things that we tried until we got it working. I'm sure there'll be a blog post on that later. I'm going to talk a little slower because I'm noticing people are saying that the audio is quicker than the video is coming through. So I can imagine that's probably the lag of going through one, coming back to the other. So one of the most significant things that we brought about, I think a couple years ago or last year, we finally got it out, is we brought about central management deployments and management, Chocolatey Central Management. And that was to bring out the ability to have one place centralized where you could actually see, manage, and do things with all of the machines inside of your organization. And that first version brought along with it reporting. And so other things that we want to do with that, one of the most significant things was to be able to actually manage those endpoints that you have, or those machines or other things. And so a lot of that is where central management, when our customers and other folks who are asking for central management, the most important and significant thing for them has been, I want to manage things, right? And so we're really excited to start getting this into people's hands and to actually show this off today. And so I think the biggest question that a lot of people that are unfamiliar with Chocolatey or haven't seen some of that is, why did we create this in the first place? And to be honest, it was the number one feature request by our customers. I think when we imagined Chocolatey for Business originally, I'm not even sure if we even imagined any kind of centralized management type of thing. Like if we did, we thought, man, that's way, way off. But our customers and folks kept coming back to us and say, I want this, I need this. Other tools that I have fall down in certain areas. And so that's what's brought us to creating central management and bringing out the next step in that in our third release, which is deployments. So without further ado, let's just take a scenario, right? So I have maybe a website out somewhere that has a couple of machines that are load balancing that particular app, and a database in the back, right, that they're both using. And I need to go through the process of actually managing that and getting it upgraded. And so what does that look like? And so let's say here's my app. I know it's pretty basic. I can look up certain apps here. I gotta give it a moment here. Yeah. So the most important thing I want you to kind of focus in on is this is version 1.0.0. Now, my folks have been hard at work. People that are working on this app website here, and they have now version 1.2 that we're getting ready to release. For some reason, we're skipping 1.1, but we're going right to that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log into Central Management here. And upon doing that, I'll notice that I have a couple of new tabs here, groups and deployments. Now, if I go into groups, you'll notice I already have a couple of groups set up. So if I wanted to create a group, I could simply say, and we've zoomed in on the screen, so we got to scroll a little bit. Normally, you wouldn't have to scroll. Create one, let's just say test group, right? And then I would give it a description here, right? And then I could choose to push them all over if I wanted to, or I could select things that I would want to be in there. And I could actually put groups in groups as well. So I can get, and I wouldn't necessarily need that one. I could go ahead and maybe drop this. And so this could be everything that is related to this particular app. Actually, let's do that. Let's just call this group client servers, client app servers, right? So in case I needed to deploy to all of those client, all the machines for that client app, like to take the entire thing down, I would be able to target one particular thing. So let's go ahead and say all machines related to the client application. Right, so I come down here. Notice there's a couple of interesting things in the legend now. All of these machines are good because we have enough licenses to cover all the machines that we have in our environment, so we shouldn't see any of that. Note here, one of the things that we do have to do when we upgrade to the newest version of Chocolatey extensions, Chocolatey agent and all of that is we do have to be on Chocolatey agent v10, and we'll also have to be on the dependency that it'll have, which is the next version of Chocolatey license extension, so that we can then turn on the feature to use Chocolatey Central Management deployments. Because there are security aspects of being able to now deploy to computers, it has to be an opt-in type of feature, right? So you'll just be able to opt in by running that Choco feature enable minus name, use Chocolatey Central Management deployments, and you'll be good to go, right? So now I've created this particular one. However, what we're going to end up using, we're probably going to use these two. So now coming over to the deployment screen. So what we have are draft deployments, deployments that are ready to go, deployments that are currently running, and deployments that have completed. Now, another thing that we have is we have the ability to go see our archived deployments as well. And let's just go ahead and start the process of creating deployments so we can kind of work through that process. So here, I've come in. I can actually name this if I want to. I could leave it the default, and then I could add steps and do other things. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually want to have a better name for this. So we're going to call this Client Application Upgrade to the 1.2.0. And if we get a good name on it, click Save. Now, we're going to add a step here, and we need to upgrade that database. So that's what I'm going to do, because we'll need to upgrade the database, then we can upgrade our website. And so I'm going to start off with a basic script. And so I am going to call this upgrade database. And in that, I have a database package that I will be upgrading here, and it's mbcmusicstore.db or -db. And I can go ahead and select my target computers, and that's going to be the database servers. All right, and oh yeah, I also need to go ahead and take that site down. So I don't want to start upgrading that database with the site currently running. So I'm going to have to go ahead and take down the database first, or sorry, take down the website first. And so this will be take our site offline. And this particular one, I have a script I'm going to run, right? So take a look at this. All looks good, right? Also note, on my first time in here, I have some tips because I'm in PowerShell. So I can actually run Choco over here, but in case I do need to capture that last exit code. And also, typically, I'm going to want to exit with that exit code. So this particular one, because I'm just copying a file over, if it has an issue, the script's going to fail. It's going to tell me about that. So I can go ahead and hide these. Now, I'm going to actually target my web servers here. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. And like I said, I actually need to do that before I upgrade the database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move it and save that. And now that's step one, and step two is to upgrade that database. Third step in, let's go ahead and upgrade the website. Upgrade website. And my typing skills are lacking. This is why I'm copy pasting a little bit. Choco upgrade, and that particular one is going to be NBC Music Store Web. All right, and so the web, that's going to be these guys again. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that over. And now we're going to add our last step, and that's to bring that site back online. So now that we've upgraded, we need to go ahead and bring the site online. And I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to go ahead and click to bring over here to the web servers. I'm going to try to save it. Now notice what's going to tell me, hey, I actually have to add something here. So I'm going to come back here, and oh yeah, I forgot to get my script. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. And I'll go ahead and pop that in there. Let's take a look at it. It looks like it came through just fine. And I will click Save. All right, so now, as we take a look at this, we can actually kind of look over and see how these things are applying and what we're running across all these machines. And so we see here, first step, take this site offline. Now notice execution timeout in seconds. Looks like we're giving it 4 hours. We got some valid exit codes that we're accepting. Fail overall deployment if not successful, true. Only run other deployment steps if successful, false. So what does that mean? Well, let's pop back in here and actually show those advanced filters. So these are typically set in the proper way by default to kind of get us down the right path. Like we don't have to come in and actually edit these. But if I come down here to fail overall deployment if not successful. So what this says is if this step fails, the whole deployment, the whole overall thing is counted as a failure. However, it will continue to run the other steps unless we check the box for the next step, right? And so if this fails, if we can't take the site offline, we probably shouldn't try to upgrade the database, right? So we're actually going to go ahead and say, check this box so that that's going to make sure that we don't run that next one. We're going to do the same for the database, right? Because we don't necessarily want it to go to the next step if it fails, right? and then we'll be able to go and inspect and see what the problem is. Normally, we would probably do that for the website too, since we have a very procedural thing. However, we just kind of want to see this as it goes. So we're going to leave that as is. And now we'll take another review here, make sure that we're in the right order. Site offline, upgrade database, upgrade our website, bring our site online. Now, what's really interesting to think about is how powerful yet simple what we've just done is. We've set up some scripts that are going to allow us to target different computers as we go. So we are going to our web, then we're going to our database, then we're coming back and going to our web. So this cross-machine type of orchestration is very powerful. Don't miss the fact that we've done it so simply. Let you miss that point. So now, looks good, right? So our next thing is we'll go ahead and click save, return to points and load already saved. And so one of the things that we can do here is we can actually move it to ready. Now, first phase of the deployments aspect is we move things to what's called ready. Typically, if I need to go in and edit something, so I can look at it here, if I edit it, it's going to go back into draft. Why do we have these different sections? Why don't we just go from draft to active? So what that's allowing me to do is prepare a deployment, get it all the way set, and in phase, I don't know what phase, coming up, an upcoming future release after this, we're actually going to open up the idea of approvals where people can prepare the deployments and other people can approve them, right? And so that it can sit and ready, wait for that. The other thing that you're not seeing is being able to say, I want to schedule this, right? So right now, you create it, you set it into ready, and there it is. Now, in the future, we're going to allow scheduling. If things go well, it may actually be in the first phase. We don't know. Right now, we're looking at a future phase for that. And so from here, I can go some of the other actions, but the quick action here is to just go to run now. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to kick this guy off, and then we're going to start watching it. So we're starting it. Let's do that. All right, and so now that it's running, I can see that I have one step that's active, and one machine has picked it up. And so what that's done is that's set that site to offline. I'll stick on this for just a second. And if we refresh, I guess this is zoomed in a little bit. I'm going to zoom out for a second so we can see a little bit more here. We're waiting for it to finish. And so what we've done for the purposes of the demo is we actually put in a 30-second sleep time. So this would have been done pretty quickly, and we would have moved on to the next step. This gives us an opportunity to kind of review what's going on. The first one has finished. Now, we can actually view the log, see what it did. And so it ran this, take the site web down, and it exited. So no errors, everything was successful. Now if we refresh, depending on when that was picked up, it looks like 1990, so it's just almost 30 seconds later. Now, not to say that these run in successive order, it just depends on when it pushes out to that next particular one. When it's saying, hey, I need to check to see if I got any deployments or however we're moving that through, that's when it's going to pick up, right? And so this is not necessarily excessive. You could pick up 500 machines at once and have them running something. So, and both of those are now successful. And so that's moved into the upgrade database. And so that is moving along. Hopefully there's no errors with this, and we'll move into that next step. Otherwise, we're going to run into errors and actually have to come back to that. So let's take another look in here. Oh, that has finished. On my way in, it finished. All right. And so now we're upgrading the website. As we look, the website's still offline, so that's good. Nobody that's using the website is running into big issues. They just can't use it at the moment because the site's down. And so that's upgrading those two sites. Looks like the first one is already finished. The other one hasn't even started yet. If we click refresh, that one's now active. And let's just see what the log has here for us. So we were running this particular script, and it ran that particular thing, got everything installed for us. So now if we come back, we should be at the last step, which is to bring the site back online. And both are in ready state. Is it going to finish successfully? Or are we going to have some errors and other things. So while we're waiting on this, let's talk about some of these statuses here. So we have success and failed. Those are hopefully pretty self-explanatory. Ready is this particular step has went into ready. So the next thing is when a machine picks it up, it goes to active. And then we get to one of these items over here. Unreachable means that after a certain period of time, we weren't able to reach that system. That system wasn't even reaching to us. We got to mark it unreachable and mark that step inconclusive. So unreachable and inconclusive are very similar to each other. Inconclusive is, let's say that execution timeout occurred on that system because we didn't give it long enough to run. It's going to basically maybe let that continue running, but it's going to come back and say, I don't know what the status this is, and that's what we're going to get back. And we'll probably get the log up until the point of inconclusive. Canceled is something we do on our side. Should we decide to cancel this step, then it won't work. If there is a step where it's failed, and that step will fail the other steps, the rest of them will get canceled. And known as a status we should almost never see. It just means that something went wrong. We show it so that it's there in case something shows up and for some reason we get to that status. That's what that one's about. All right, looks like this was successful. Looks like overall our entire deployment out to upgrade this website was successful. So now if we bring this out, look at that. Looks like there's a application offlinks. Small issue with that, but that's just in the header. So maybe we can fix that up for the next time that we go offline. Fix up that typo. All right, now bring it back up, and you'll notice that we are now on version 1.2, right? So really, really interesting. That is deployments in a nutshell. It really is that easy. Now, one of the best things that I think is you get this beautiful, beautiful view of your deployments. But another thing that you can do is you can actually export that to PDF and give it to your executives. And they get a report that shows what happens. So if there are errors or other things, you have something you print off, you can hand it to somebody, and they can make a reasonable assumption about what's going on simply by looking at it. Right, we can see all the machines are targeted. Now, this is a trivial example. It's like 4 machines, but to go up against like 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 machines, definitely the system can handle that type of scale. And that's kind of what we've designed, and it's taken a while, and that we are so excited to be able to share that now. Now, curiously, if you want to see what it looks like when something errors, I did have one that actually failed. I get a failed step 1 with the result reason, and then I can actually dig in, find out what that was. This particular system failed, and bring up that log, and I can actually just, where did it fail at? Let's just drop right down to the first point where I ran into an error. And it looks like I didn't have a permission that I needed. So I'm able to kind of go on down and through that log to actually see all the errors that it's detected.
So just to interject there slightly, Rob, there's a slightly longer question from our friend in Austria, from Manfred. So the question is, what's the underlying connection layer stroke protocol? Can Choco packages be deployed from CCM directly, or do all deployment targets need to have access to a Chocolatey source that contains a package? How to verify multiple clients install the same package stroke version of a package if they have multiple different sources?
That is a great question. So what I would recommend, to start out, this is phase 1 of deployments. There are a lot of things we want to do with it, and that's where you guys come in to actually get this in your hands and play with it, and to come back and let us know where you want to see more things. We have a whole bunch more things we want to do with this. We consider what we've laid down as basically the framework and the foundation of what we want to do. So we're excited to put more into it. Now, to answer specifically, all those systems are going to have that package on some source that they can access. Central management and deployments don't manage the sources. You're able to actually specify a source if you need more of an advanced item inside of a step, like a Choco install. Notice this is install upgrade and a package name. So when you start to get a little bit more advanced, you would come in here and you would say Choco install something, right? And then you could say version, right? So you could restrict your version. You can actually tell it what source. And you're able to pass all of that stuff in here. And I'll just give you a quick example of kind of what that looks like. So if I go over here to reports, and let's go into deployments here, and I have one that I ran, I believe it's this one. And this one was just a quick way of, I tested out my deployments to make sure everything was right. And then I actually ran a PowerShell script that was taking it back down to version 1 and allowing the downgrade. Now, the next thing I should have done was check that last exit code, make sure that exit code was good, and then exited with the exit code that was handed to me. But I do have the option to actually do more advanced Choco stuff with that. Now, why do we have a basic script and why do we have an advanced script? And the biggest reason for that is the advanced script comes with more permissions. Like, so you can actually create users that all they can do is manage Chocolatey packages. They will not be able to set up for those Chocolatey scripts. You can set up users that can create deployments, but they can't actually run them. So they can get them all ready to go, and then somebody else can actually kick them off. So you do have a lot of RBAC that's built into the system, and like I said, that's just a foundation for some of the stuff that we want to do. Hopefully that's answered the question maybe a little bit further.
I think it did. I mean, that was the only thing I was going to bring up, is that there is a distinction between basic and advanced. So the idea being that you can empower certain users to be able to do certain operations, but obviously restrict access to the advanced one. And that, as you say, is permissions based just through the CCM admin console. Maurice has asked a question, and Stevie's saying sure, and I just want to make sure that I personally haven't tested this, but the question was, would I be able to invoke box starter with CCM in order to handle reboots of a machine if that was a requirement for the deployment that I wanted to do?
I believe it's possible. However, I have no idea what it's going to do.
I mean, the only thing I would say there is that as long as the execution timeout for the step was set in such a way that, I don't know. I'm not sure if that would report back in successfully after a reboot. In the current architecture, I don't know if a reboot would work currently.
It's possible to restart in the middle of it will probably have it not report back in. So that would be something that if you need to do a reboot. So that's something that we explicitly said, you know what, we think reboots are important. We haven't approached reboots as part of central management yet, and we won't do it in the foundation this first release. But we will look to do it in a future release. We're just not sure when that is yet, because we think that, you know, there are things you're going to install that are actually going to require a reboot before you do anything else, and so it's important to handle that. And this goes to Chocolatey, the package manager, does not handle reboots. It just tells you that you need one. Central management, on the other hand, is more of that more complete software management, and so yes, it should be able to do orchestration, which includes reboots and handling that. So. So yeah, all kinds of fun things we can do here.
So one of the other common asks that we didn't quite get to in this first phase, but if you go back to the software tab, Rob, Maurice pointed out at the start of the stream that there is that we had an outdated bit of software. What we are envisioning in the next release, or one of the next releases, is that you would simply click on that MVC Music Store database software that's being marked as outdated. From there, you would see a list of all. So this is existing functionality exists in CCM today. It will list out all the computers that outdated bit of software is currently on. What we're envisioning is a button somewhere on this page that simply says, "Go Gadget, upgrade that package across all those machines." So at the minute, in order to remediate that outdated package, you would create a group, you would add the computers to the group, you would create the deployment. Now that all of the framework is in place in the CCM deployments in this phase, we're envisioning and building on that very quickly so that we can facilitate quick remediation of packages directly from this page rather than building out those groups So it's come up a couple of times, so I just wanted to bring that to the forefront as well. Right-click remediate. I love it, Adil.
Yes.
I love it.
And it's worth also mentioning, on a computer, we collect a little bit of information right now on these computers. What we have on the backlog, on the roadmap, is what we call enhanced reporting. We actually start collecting a lot more information about the computer, including the entire Chocolatey configuration, so we can actually show it here and then allow you to say, hey, I actually want to change something in the configuration, and get that same thing where it goes to create that deployment with that information. So
there's a couple of
auto groups, other fun things that we want to do. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
There's a couple of comments in the chat that I want to address. The first one, I'll come back to you. The more serious question is from Matthias. If a computer is offline, will that deployment fail or delay? So that's Rob kind of touched on that, and that's to do with the unreachable or inconclusive status. So if you schedule a deployment, or if you create a deployment and activate it, and after a period of time that is configurable in the configuration file, I believe, Rob, in the CCM service.
Right now, we have this contact timeout.
Timeout, yes.
It's hard-coded for the first release. Let me make it bigger here a little bit. It's hard-coded for the first release. Now, in the future releases, we're actually going to give you the ability to choose what that timeout needs to be. One of the things that we kind of snuck in was the ability to take that number and make it go up or down, but you have to go and directly edit a config file to do that. We may have some organizations that may say, 20 minutes isn't quite enough time. I might want to bump that way up. We look for a happy medium, right? And so that's what we've done. And even though you do edit in the config file, it won't say anything here. So you'll just have to know that it has been changed, and it's at the service level. So you don't have to change it where your CCM services are. So if you have under a certain number of machines, you probably only have one central management service running. If you have a number over that, and you're trying to scale, right? Or you're co-located, you may have multiple central management service machines. You also have to put that in each one of those.
So that's the first part of that, Matthias. That is if we're not able to pass a deployment to the computer, that's the timeout that will mean that it will be failed as unreachable. On the flip side, if a step runs longer than it's intended to run, that's where the inconclusive status would come into play. So if you go over your execution timeout for the step plus a buffer, then eventually that step will be marked as inconclusive because we weren't able to finish off that step. So in theory, you should never be in a completely hung state with a deployment. It will either fail, hard fail, it will succeed, or there'll be some indication of what went wrong with that.
Let's just see that.
The other.
So I'll put sleep 60.
So it's the other question.
The
other question the other comment in the chat room was with regard to. Let me just find it so I can read it. Where did it go? It was from. Why can't I see it? Oh yes. Will it be able to install winget packages? Was a question from someone who shall remain nameless. How do we want to address that question?
Sure. Check it out. Winget install. There you go. I guess if we're going to address the elephant in the room, let's address the. So Winget is a fancy app installer. It doesn't have the most important thing of a package manager, which is a package. And so that's really the difference between Chocolatey and Winget. Winget addresses MSIs, MSIX, which maybe MSIX could be a package. If that was the only thing that it installed, it's not. And then executable installers in the future, zips. But sometimes those installers and other things, they don't actually do what you need them to do. They only install, they can only run an installer. They can't manage like, oh, I needed to edit a registry that something went wrong. So like if you look at our Git package, you'll notice that you're able to actually set, for like Windows line endings and other things, being able to say, yeah, use the whatever on path, some of the Linux tools. You can't do any of that with the installer silently. We are making changes to the registry with the Chocolatey package. So you actually have to manage through the script some of that. There are other things in installers that have deficiency. Let's take maybe GitHub package, for example, or some of the other packages out there. Being able to manage to the installer only is not enough. It just isn't. And so it's really a difference between an app installer and a package manager. A package manager can make up for those deficiencies, and you can deploy your own internal software without having to package it up in an MSI or an exe installer. You can just use something simple like PowerShell, which is very approachable for system admins, and be able to manage those pieces of software with true packages. Let's just put it that way. But that's kind of the difference between the two, right? That's where Win gets great for, I need to get some apps on my machine really quickly. But the long-term management of things that don't blend well to just need to install an app, actually want to install it maybe with some options or overcome those issues. Plus, I need to manage 100% of the software that I'm going to put on machines. You just can't with an app installer. You really need a package manager to do that. I'm not going to name the person that put this out there, but when they were looking at Winget versus Chocolatey, the first thing they said was, wow, Winget can manage maybe 30% of the software we deploy in my organization. 30%. And that's even with the roadmap of everything that they want for it to do. So that's kind of the difference. But yeah, you could actually say, I want to deploy the Winget package AppX thing to some systems. You could do that through central management deployments, and you could use Winget install. There's nothing that keeps you from that.
Yep. So that's one of the benefits of having the PowerShell script in the advanced section. Literally, it's PowerShell. You can do. It's the same argument that we've had for putting PowerShell scripts as first and foremost within a Chocolatey package. You've got the same benefit here when it comes to the deployment step. The other comment that I wanted to bring up was, do we see this targeting mainly as client, server, or both in terms of deployments?
Both, I think, and so this is where people will come back and they'll ask the question, well, I'm using Ansible, or I'm using Puppet, or I'm using insert configuration, true configuration manager here. And we say, great, use those things, they're great for that. If you need to complement that with some orchestration, that's where things like Chocolatey Central Management deployments becomes very complementary in features and what it can do. So if you needed to say, hey, actually, I need to push this out right now, I can't wait that 30 minutes for that. I have the opportunity to do this. And another thing is configuration managers are great, but when it comes to desktops, they're not so strong in that area because you don't have a lot of machines that are same. It's like little pets. It's not like cattle, as if we use those two things that people like to say. You don't have a lot of things that are consistent. And so you come into these things that are like, I need these particular things. That's where central management deployments can lay down a baseline to those client apps and kind of keep those up to date. And people can use something called Chocolatey self-service, and they can manage those other apps that they may want to bring in, right? And kind of be able to even use some of those same repositories. And every once in a while, you could have a deployment that actually goes and upgrades all of it for them, right? So in terms of what you can do, I mean, it's pretty limitless here. And so another thing is we think heavily about security, and security is kind of the forefront of the deployments aspect. We have added a couple of things that I don't know if we really need to get into in this call, that if you needed to go over the internet for any reason, you're going to be setting some additional settings inside of the Chocolatey to be able to see that. And actually, I got to put some computers in here.
So the follow-up comment on that one was with regard to client machines can be occasionally connected. Does that cause a problem? But in this architecture, the way that we've implemented this first phase of CCM, an occasionally connected client doesn't make any difference. When those machines come back online, CCM will figure that out and push those or make those deployment steps available for those client machines. Again, as long as it happens within that period of time within the deployment step being set to active, an occasionally connected client shouldn't cause any problems.
Correct. And when we think of occasionally connected environment clients, we're talking about occasionally connected to a VPN or something internal. Typically, some of those machines are still online like all the time, right? So them being online does give them the opportunity, online or on the internet, gives them an opportunity to still be able to check into central management and be able to run those things, because it's not within the bounds of a domain or some sort of thing. You choose that you can open that up to a little bit more. with those additional security settings that I was just talking about. So we are looking at in a future phase how we can better manage the idea of when a machine comes online, checks in, the next time I want you to target that and run this on it, right? Kind of thing. So if you set up something that says, hey, maybe you create some sort of deployment that says, I need this to run on every machine the next time that machine connects. And so it would sit in an active state for quite a while, but it'd be kind of treated as a special thing. It's just waiting to hit all those computers. That's not in this release. So just to be clear, let's see here. I want to do Choco config. I just want to get the list back so we can see what I'm talking about. See if we can get that. Show list. Target computers. Really, I just need it on one. So let's go with this guy. Okay, Choco config lists. Save. Save. This is actually going to fail. I need the order different so I can run this first. Okay, save. So we're going to fail on execution timeout just to see what that's like. And then go ahead and click run now, get that started. Show the list. Still thinking.
While we are thinking, there's another comment, quite a specific question, but can the Chocolatey agent also write to the HKCU of each user to distribute software settings?
It can. You have to do all the PowerShell for that currently. In the future, one of the things that we want to do is better handle HKU and being able to load up those DAT files and kind of then make available for changes. That's something that is on the roadmap for Chocolatey, even outside of central management. And so being able to light that up with Chocolatey would make it a lot easier to kind of manage throughout the rest of the systems.
So just to clarify that specifically, so at the minute when you run Chocolatey agent, I also known as a background service, we are running in the context of a service account typically. So user specific settings don't go to the user who initiated the installation on that machine. It would happen in the context of the service account. So what Rob's saying there is that there is a backlog item to better handle those situations where something is happening specifically to the user who initiated the installation, not the one who's carrying it out.
And so here's kind of the concept of central management items. So we have service URL. That's one of the things we're required to set. It won't be set by default. It turns on central management. We have a feature called Use Chocolatey Central Management. We have to turn on so that we can use Chocolatey Central Management. And another feature, where's it at? That is brand new. If I get to the features here, use Chocolatey Central Management deployments, right? And so if we are going to push out or have machines checking in from the internet, two additional things that we'll want to set are these two guys. There's a client and service communication. It's a salt additive. We use the word password because it will encrypt it at rest in the file, in the config file automatically if it has the word password in it. So what this is, and it kind of talks about it, it's a long way of saying the way that Chocolatey kind of talks back and forth in systems is it has some items that it kind of puts together in a salt additive that it adds in and it hashes the entire thing. And then what happens is it goes over the network and the other side knows that same, it's kind of like a shared key. The other side has a key too. And that way you can actually verify that what's being asked for it to do is coming from a valid source, right? When we're going over the internet, we need to set up our own, right? So that, it's a lot of words here. The important thing is that it says is that salt additive never gets transmitted ever across the wire. So another really important note is there was an old way for clients to check in, and you do set this salt additive because that way is less secure over the internet. we shut off the old way completely. Right now, it's deprecated for the new way to check in. So before you can turn this on, all of your clients across your organization have to be on at least Chocolatey Agent 0.10.0. So you want to upgrade everything internally first, and then set these things if you're going to allow communication over the internet. So those are those two things.
So on that note, we probably should clarify that in this next release of CCM, there will be an update to Chocolatey Licensed, there'll be an update to Chocolatey Agent, and there will be an update to the 3 CCM packages. So it's,
yes.
And there may or may not be a release of Chocolatey itself as well, unrelated, but we may push out a new version of Chocolatey as well. So updates across the board. But luckily, it's all based on a package manager, so we can literally just do Choco upgrade all of those, and we'll be off to the races.
All right, so this is that inconclusive, right? And so, as we see, we didn't get back the log file because it never reported back it timed out. That's because we gave it 5 seconds to run, and we slapped a sleep in there 60 seconds. So we made sure that it couldn't actually finish. We gave it 5 seconds to run. And it might have run in 5 seconds except for that. And so while it was running, and it did finish on those systems, even though it basically abandoned it, we don't know what happened. So what this is telling us is we go back to our deployment report. We need to now investigate, right? Because the entire deployment is considered inconclusive.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know if I bring it up in Excel. I don't think it's going to show up in here properly, but there is an Excel version. It also does have the graphs in it. It was fantastic work by our group to kind of get that going. So yeah, here's going through there and then showing the stuff where it actually failed on that inconclusive. Oh, and I should mention, what you're seeing today is a pre-release. It is what we would consider beta. There may be some changes to some of the looks. We may find some bugs in doing this. All those will be corrected by the time we bring out Central Management 0.2.0, if they're deemed very, very important to capture. So you guys didn't see it. I saw a couple of bugs, a couple tiny things that we'll have to look into.
So Maurice has a follow-up question, I think, on what you just showed. If it finished after 5 seconds, will the deployment be cancelled? If it is successful after a longer period of time, why does it not report back correctly?
It's given a certain period of time to report back. That's what that execution timeout is for. Make sure it's enough.
Yeah. And then which HKLM would be the one to write to? Okay, there's a follow-up comment, I think, to a response that Stevie made. So I'll leave Stevie to follow up. No, it wasn't. It was Corbob, sorry. There's a follow-up comment in the chat room there for you, Corbob, if you wouldn't mind taking that one. That'd be appreciated.
Okay. I did want to catch up on that last thing. Why doesn't it kill the execution? If you've ever killed MSIX in the middle of an execution, had to rebuild a machine, you know that's a terrible idea. So that's why we do not kill execution of things, because that could destroy an entire box. So we abandon the process, let it keep going, and report back inconclusive, saying, and this is what Choco does too. So Chocolatey itself, when it runs, it's given an execution timeout. If it doesn't meet that execution timeout, it just abandons that process, kind of lets it continue, and Chocolatey comes back with a report of no idea. Right? It was inconclusive. But if we go further than that and try to kill the process that's running, bad things can happen. Now, may we at some point say, hey, let's give people that a really, really sharp knife and let them destroy their systems accidentally? Sure, maybe. We are giving you a pretty sharp knife now where you're able to do some things with itty tiny bitty constraints. Because like I said, you could actually, in the script, you could give it a certain time and you could wait some process inside of your PowerShell script, and you could actually kill it and destroy your machine. So you have the opportunity to actually have the power to do that. We just like to make sure the system isn't going to necessarily leave you in a bad state with some of the items it has. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
There's a follow-up question from Mateus in the chat room. Can we rerun inconclusive clients? Not
You
in
can,
this release,
okay,
I don't
so
think.
you can rerun, which means you can create a new deployment and copy that stuff back in there and run it again in a future release, because we know it's necessary, we need it, is the idea of this being able to copy an existing deployment into a template, basically template from it, where you create a new deployment or create exactly as is. So copying so that you could rerun something that had an issue. Or setting up sort of this idea of like a recurrence, like, hey, every once in a while I want to run Choco upgrade all. Can I just set up a recurring task thing? And again, none of those are there yet. So we have kind of the ability to bring these in, kind of figure out the priority for when we want to bring these things into deployments. But we just wanted to get out what we have so far so that we can actually get something into people's hands versus waiting another 4 or 5 months while we get the rest of that stuff working. So I think most of you will appreciate that's getting it into your hand with the functionality that's there now, and then we can start working towards the rest of that. For release, let's talk about that for a second. I don't know if that question came up or not because I'm not watching the chat. We are looking at early June to actually release this. We are shipping betas soon. So that we can get this into some folks' hands and let them kind of come back and let us know where they're seeing things, possible issues. We've really been working on this heavily. What was it, since like December, January? We've been planning central management deployments for 2.5, 3, 4 years now, a while. And so it's not something brand new. It's not something that we just built overnight. It has a lot of thoughts, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of folks that are in the chat, folks that are, me and Gary here. They've done really good work to kind of put this together. So for me, I think it's awesome. So I'm ready to see it get out there and get in people's hands and help us figure out what we should do with it next.
So one comment I think we can follow up with here from Manfred. Can you set up CCM to act as quote-unquote infrastructure monitoring, i.e. send a mail send a mail message or invoke a URL API endpoint with some client information of a client that went offline / reported a failed package install, etc. I don't think we've got any direct plans for that in the immediate roadmap. What I would say is that there is a REST-based API available, although not fully discoverable today, for all of the information that is contained within CCM. So the architecture, the foundation for building those sort of add-ons is there.
To kind of highlight that a bit, one is you'll notice that is specifically missing is what to do on failure steps. Like if this fails, do this. We don't have that in there yet. That is something that we are looking to do in the future, and that could either be targeting a machine that failed, or it could be going back and doing something additional. So we specifically left that out of this release, again, because we wanted to get something into people's hands.
And the one thing I thought about, we didn't go into in too much detail. Did we want to mention the different scenarios regarding not opted into deployments, licensing, not enough adequate licenses to allow deployments to happen, and just kind of to highlight how that gets surfaced into the CCM UI as well?
Sure. Let's see if I can go and make one of these not opt-in, and then maybe we get something. Okay, so let's kind of talk about it. So if, let's say your license allows for 50 machines, right, and you have 75 machines checking in, you're probably only going to be able to target about, is it 55 machines? So we go over the teeny bit on whatever that license count is, because we know that you may have some that come in. The important thing is maybe you have some computers that are old that are no longer checking in. You do now have the option to remove them. But if they check in again, they're going to get rolled right back in, right? So that count of what it is that you can actually deploy to goes off of that license count exceeded, right? So the other thing is you have this option of saying, I have some machines here. I don't want to opt them in for deployment, right? And so that's chosen by you on configuration on your clients, right? And so that's this particular feature. Let's take the client DB out of ability to check in.
So while you're doing that, I'll just address a couple of questions as well. Manfred's asking, can we have a sneak peek to the reports section? Are reports customizable? At the minute, the reports are they're not customizable. No, not in the CCM UI. But again, there are mechanisms to get some of that data out. If you wanted to create your own reporting or tie into a larger reporting system, you can definitely do that. And there was mention of Pascal's kind of asking, are there any plans to deploy a package to a client machine and have the deployment pop up on the client machine, but let the user of the client machine decide when to install? We have some items on the roadmap with regard to toast notifications and the concept of maintenance windows on a machine. So any deployment that was scheduled or activated would at some point adhere to that maintenance window that's established on those machines. But they're on the roadmap, but they're not currently within this release.
All right, so then that should knock that one out. And what that means, yes. So now what's happening is I see a group. It's all client app servers, and it's telling me that I have things that are not opted in for deployments, and that is because this machine has now opted out, so I can no longer deploy to it. So I was able to shoot my own foot off. Don't run that particular command unless you want to go to those machines and change them. So again, we're giving you a tool, a knife, and as I like to say, knives are sharp, but they don't constrain you a lot, right? So they give you an option to do a lot of things, and they're very powerful. And that right there is one reason that we restrict the permissions to run any old script. By default, for let's say a deployment user, you have to get that special privilege to run scripts. So otherwise, you're just managing Chocolatey packages with deployments, which gives you a lot of functionality, but it has to be wrapped up in a Chocolatey package, that functionality, which means somebody has had the opportunity to really review it, other things, possibly do some sort of package promotion along that line. And so, as you see, this has not been opted into deployments by configuration, right? And so what happens is if I go create a deployment and I want to do something with that database, so I'm just going to add a step that doesn't really do anything, and I'm going to bring in that database. So I get this, right? It's going to let me know that that one's not going to be targetable. I can go back, or I could save it, sure. I get this nice note here saying, hey, I got a problem. If I save it and I go back to deployments, if I move it to ready, I believe I can move it to ready, but I shouldn't be able to actually start it. Yeah. And the reason I can move to ready is because I may have things that are ineligible at the moment, but they may become eligible by the time I actually get ready to do the deployment. Right? So I want to be able to give the opportunity to get it to the point where it's ready and then manage anything on the back that's actually going to get it set in a proper manner. And so I can't actually do anything with that, and so I would edit it and maybe take out that computer. Use a different target group. And what you'll notice here is when I do that, when I save it, this deployment is now popped back up into drafts. So it's no longer ready. So that kind of goes over that scenario.
And the other one is imagine a scenario.
Somebody mentioned.
So let me just follow up while we've got it on that screen. Let's imagine you've currently got 50 machines already reporting into CCM. So at the top there, you would have managed computer count 50 of 50. If you suddenly bring on another 50 machines, or they get provisioned within the environment and they all start reporting into CCM, then some of those new machines will no longer be deployable by CCM, because that's the one point where we are enforcing the license counts associated with your Chocolatey licensed Chocolatey license is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's where one point where we are starting to enforce that license count that you've got associated with your account.
And it's worth mentioning that we do give you a bit of an overage. I think it's 15% with a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 100.
I always forget the number. It's some maximum number. Yes.
So, something like that. So basically, if you have 500, you would get whatever 15% of that is. If you have, say, 35 is your managed count, you would actually get 40, because at the minimum, we're giving you 5 extra machines you could deploy to. It's really easy to fix that problem. In fact, when that does come up, there's a little message here. You click on it, and it actually kind of talks you through how you go get more licenses. Right? So real easy to fix that problem when the license count is below the actual number of machines you're actually working with.
And once you do that and machines continue to report in, then they will start immediately become available for deployments. You won't have to do anything on each of the client machines. It would just be the client, the license that is deployed onto the CCM server. And as those machines continue to report in, they'll just automatically be available for deployments.
Yes, and one known issue that we're carrying into that first release is all you have to do is go and restart the web and the service, or all the services that are on the CCM side, which is just one, unless you have multiple instances of it. So you restart that, and you restart the web, and it will pick up that new count. So in the future, we'll actually be carrying that, and when a new one drops in, we'll see it, and immediately we'll update the website without having to restart that or the service. That won't carry in the first release. So.
And just a nice comment from the chat room, Marisa saying, just wanted to say that this looks really amazing. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. And sorry, you were going to go back to have a look at the reports, and to there was a question from Manfred a while back regarding looking at the reports and what's available.
So there's reports. What I could do is I could export all of these deployments out to a report, which gives me this concept of all the deployment plans that have run. And I don't know, I think we were putting the archived on this, but I don't know if it's there on this particular one, but you can see it here. And then if I want to get to one that exports PDF, is going to be very similar to what I saw when I was, over on the actual thing and looking at that report from that level. So while I have the reports section that carries deployments itself, when a deployment has run or it's active or all of that, I'm able to really get in and dig into those details and see what's going on. So I get that, I call it active generation of reporting, kind of seeing it as it's going, and I'm able to see it afterwards as well over here. And if I don't want to see one over here that has completely like this disabled deployments, I can simply archive it, and that takes it out of this view, and so I don't have to see it anymore. If I want to go find them, the archived ones, they're still there, and I can go look those up. You may have noticed there's little tiny things, like we probably need a little space there. So little tiny things in the cleanup of this, to getting it ready for that first final release. But of course, we need groups to say more than just groups. But for the most part, the functionality is very, very good. I'm excited about it. So,
what I like to say is that in this release, I see this as the foundational release. All the building blocks are in place for all of the advanced scenarios that we expect our customers to want to be able to do. And based on that feedback, we can start prioritizing which one of those features we want to light up in the subsequent releases. But this foundational release has all the building blocks for doing all of those basic deployments, and also all of those more complicated ones that you want to do as part of your infrastructure management. So I don't think we had much more from a demo point of view, Rob. So we'll leave the chat room open just now, and we'll field any more questions that might come up. So feel free to shoot them into the chat room just now, and we can address them. So there's one from Manfred. You mentioned a REST-based API. Will there be API docs for early adopters? So that's the thing that we're waiting on, Manfred. So there is a REST-based API. It is there, and it will be available in this release of CCM, but the documentation that goes with it, that part is lagging. So depending on how much of an early adopter you want to be, you definitely can use it. You're pretty much on your own as of right now in terms of utilizing it. So if you want to blaze a trail and do a bunch of blog posts, Manfred, feel free. But in subsequent releases of CCM, we'll add in that documentation and we'll make that easier to consume. So that's pretty much where we are with that. Thank you very much, Gail. We appreciate it. Let me go. Corbob, is that? There's a discussion going on in the background, I think, between Corbob and one of the other people in the chat room about HKCU. So I think that comment is regarding that. And Adil is saying this, he will keep pestering me about the API documentation. He has asked me multiple times about lighting that up, and I'm sure he will continue to do that. So thank you for that, Adil. I appreciate it. And Stevie does have some commandlets that wrap the API for certain things, because in certain scenarios, some of the workloads that we are exercising, i.e. adding multiple computers, creating multiple deployments, testing, things like that, we do use the REST-based API to do some of that work. So it is being utilized. It adheres to all the same permission sets that you have through the actual CCM UI, so it respects all of that sort of stuff. So it is there. It can be consumed. It's just not documented at the minute. What other comments have we got here? Docs are for lazy people, says Kim. Love it. They're really impressed with everything. Good work. Thank you very much, Patrick. Webhooks would be awesome, future edition. I had thought about that as well, actually, in terms of lighting that up. So based on certain things happening, you might want to shoot a webhook to something to have something else light up outside of CCM. So I think that's definitely a suggestion for getting added to the roadmap.
Did we talk about how it actually manages the connection between the two? So we use WCF over SSL. We went that route versus WinRM because WinRM has some gaps in what it can do. Like, I don't know, manage Windows updates. There's a lot of weird stuff, and then there's the double hop and a couple of other things. You might unmute.
No, you're coming through with me. Okay, yeah.
That was one of the biggest reasons when we started going down the route to find a solution for machines kind of talking to each other and all of that, and being able to actually manage software. Among other things, we want the ability to, at some point, even like line up maybe Windows updates and other things, right? And WinRM was not so good at those kind of things. You'll find a lot of technologies kind of build on WinRM, where we kind of went down a route of explicitly knowing that WinRM was limited, and instead of trying to work around WinRM's deficiencies, we just went with something that was built on C#, which is that Windows Communication Foundation with SSL.
I was just madly trying to find a link, but Patrick in the chat room mentioned that he needs to create a provider for Duck. So what if anyone who doesn't know what Duck is a CI/CD pipeline build radiator, effectively. So it will inform you quickly if something, one of your builds has failed. So what Patrick is suggesting is he would be able to create a provider for Duck to light up when a deployment failed within his environment. So Patrick, I don't know if you want to shoot a link to Duck in the chat room, and Rob can bring it up. But I love that idea. You should totally do that. You should call yourself self. I'm missing something in the chat room. So I see what he did now. I see what Matthias did now. He's telling Patrick that he should be able to get all his packages in a row with a reference back to Duck.
Duck.
His ducks in a row. I see what he did there. You want to bring up that link that's in the chat room, Rob, so that folks can see what I was referring to there with regard to Duck. At the minute, it has providers, I think, for the likes of Azure DevOps, TeamCity, things like that. And
DuckHQ.org.
and you can configure those to light up a big build radiator page. So
dashboard you just serve.
It's essentially a dashboard, yeah. And then you would be able
documentation. Oh my!
It's amazing.
Oh my!
It's amazing.
I like it.
So one of those green blobs would be CCM deployments, and if one of them went inconclusive, it would go orange. If one of them failed, it would go red, and then you would have a link directly back to your deployment to find out what happened.
So you got these collectors, and you see you could create a collector for that.
Yep.
That is cool.
And then the observers is where you send the information to. So when something fails, you can make a Philips Hue light go red or orange. You can make a Slack message. You can send something to Mattermost. And that observers, I think, is fully configurable. So you could create your own observer to send it to wherever you want it to go to.
Oh, neat.
So I think it's a great idea. And yeah,
at least this is right.
And documentation is it's just that.
Should this be Duckload instead of download?
No, there you go.
Duck Hub.
And
sorry, Patrick.
Adil is then asking, would Rob then need another big TV for a Duck dashboard in the office?
We like dashboards.
Please don't. And Stevie's saying, please don't give him any ideas.
Oh, you know. It's gonna happen.
So yeah, that's like I said. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes here, Rob. But like I said, I don't think anything from anything else to show from a demo perspective. But happy to field any more questions if there are any. We're on a duck. We're off on a duck pun, I think.
I'm just rolling from comments from earlier. Laptop in a bag.
Oh, that was with regard to the disconnected clients.
Yeah.
Laptop in a bag, yeah. Take care, Gail. Thank you for joining us in this impromptu. We should probably follow up with on coming up. We have a webinar with regard to our QDE system, but we will follow up with a webinar, a more, let's call it polished demonstration of CCM deployment. So that will keep an eye on the website. There will be information on the website available when that webinar ships or is available. But the upcoming webinar will be with Rob and Paul, and I'm going to get my information right before I.
Well, let me just
brought it up already.
Pull up another link here. Let me just go to this and go back to chocolatey.org. So chocolatey.org, top level. Of course, there's the link to deployments, but right under that is webinar, right? So here's our webinar, Enable Your Remote Workforce. We're going to show off self-service anywhere in QDE. If you want to learn more, we got a page on that as well. Talks about what we're going to go over. And that is Thursday, June 4th. So what's that, next week? Next Thursday? Not this Thursday, but the next Thursday after.
4th, yeah.
So that's going to be about an hour-ish.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's going to be done through Zoom as opposed to something on Twitch. That's going to be done through Zoom. So we'll have all the built-in questions chat through there as opposed to through Twitch.
Right there's that sign up. Just fill out your information and click sign up. And you'll get little reminders to come in and maybe you'll get to slap it on your calendar. So
Indeed. So I think Jan's just
Indeed.
heading off in the chat room as well. Thank you for joining us, Jan. And Stevie has pointed out that QDE is our quick deploy environment.
Yes, sorry. Did we actually talk about QDE in the actual thing? I hope we did. Yes, quick deploy environment. So if you haven't heard of that, that is Chocolatey software recommended architecture in a box, which allows you to very quickly set up all that Chocolatey recommended infrastructure, where you have, say, internal repository, your Jenkins automation pipeline, where you can actually set up that package internally as your automation for you, and central management all inside of a box, ready, pre-configured, ready to go. There's one script in this next version that's going out that you run that will enable everything. So you drop your license file, run this script, and hopefully Steve will catch me if I'm wrong. It'll run everything for you, and you'll be up and running. So
Stevie's saying
pretty exciting.
Stevie's saying it's real pretty, but he's also extremely biased. So that's Stevie's take on it. And
Stevie and the team have done really good work on this. And if you are able to get it up and configured in less than an hour, tell people.
And Marisa is saying, from a personal point of view, I can tell you that it's really amazing and actually really quick to deploy. So that's good to hear. Matthias, thank you very much for coming along. Appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Adil, thanks for your help with ESXi. Maurice gave us some feedback with regard to getting QDE up and running in ESXi, so that was very useful. The next version will be even faster to stand up, Stevie's saying. And Corbob saying, I got it up and configured in less than 15 minutes. There we go. That's what we like to hear.
There it is. That's awesome.
And then it broke at some point, so maybe that wasn't such a good thing. Oh dear. So if you haven't already, definitely reach out and we can get you some help on that. I had kind of one housekeeping thing with regard to the stream. Did the whole using Skype to share Rob's screen, did that work? Did that was there any significant lag between the audio and the video, or was it all good? I'm curious for doing things like this in future. If I need to bring on Stevie, for example, to talk about QD or something, is that something that can be done? Patrick saying yes, it worked. No lag from Rob's side. Okay, good to hear. Maybe a couple of seconds lag once or twice. Okay, cool. Good to hear. Good stuff. Because as Rob mentioned, we did kind of try a few different things, but trying to do everything off of the Mac that I have here, there are limitations with regard to Mac compared to Windows. So I'm glad that we got it all up and running. Gary's audio lagged at the beginning, otherwise perfect. Curious. I'm going to blame Twitch for that. It worked perfectly after a couple of minutes. Okay, so just at the start. Okay, good to hear. Good to hear. And like I say, hopefully this was useful to everyone. But I think we are drawing to the end of the questions. But if there are any follow-up questions, feel free to shoot them on Gitter or Twitter. Or if they are having issues with anything and you are a customer, feel free to reach out to support, and we'll get you helped out through those channels. But happy to help on any of this. So if nothing else, Twitter, or if you're in Slack, if you're in our Slack, yes, another option, Stevie, is to jump into the Slack, and we can pick you up there. Okie doke. Any last comments from yourself, Rob, or are we good to close this up and head home?
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
It was pointed out, I mentioned it in the comments, but I should, hopefully she's still listening. I did see her in the chat earlier. It was commented on the UI in CCM is very nice, and I replied saying that that's all thanks to Steph. If it had been left to me, it wouldn't look like it looks like today. So hopefully she's still in the chat and she kind of heard that feedback, because yeah, it does look really good. So excited to get it in people's hands and get some feedback on the functionality side of things. Slack access. Okay, so without further ado, then I'm going to say that that's us. So thank you all for coming. From my point of view, from a logistics point of view, I'll be back here next Monday. I had plans before this came about to ship a new version of the Chocolatey Azure DevOps extension. There's been some work into that recently by David Gardner, so I'm probably going to do that next Monday. So we'll get that new version of the Azure DevOps extension pushed out, which now includes the ability to install Chocolatey onto an Azure DevOps box that it didn't have before. And that's all from David Gardner's contribution. So we'll get that done next week. And yeah, thank you all for coming. And I shall speak to you all on the internets. Take care. Bye.